Hey guys, I'm ProfitzTV bringing you another exclusive TradeSkillMaster version 4 video teaching you the basics of this add-on so you can improve and ultimately, yes, make your share of gold in the World of Warcraft. Let's get started. In this video, we're exclusively going to be talking about the settings functionality within TradeSkillMaster 4 from the new UI. From the top menu here, looking across the core services, left click on the farmost one on the right called Settings. And this will bring you to a subsection of multiple settings that we can set up within TradeSkillMaster 4 and how we want to interact with the auction house and these different types of functionality on the left-hand side. By default, you'll be brought into the general settings. Looking to the right, you have some general options, some profile options, some account syncing, and some Twitter integration. Going back to general options at the top, you can, by default, it's enabled, but you can actually opt in to remove the minimap icon. Notice as I opt in for that to hide it, the icon disappears automatically. If I remove it, by default, it's going to show. No reload required. You have the ability to store global operations based on what you want to do. So if you have multiple profiles set up with operations, enabling this will cause all but the current profile's operations to be irreversibly lost. Are you sure you want to do this? So hit cancel. Again, this does global operation confirmation. This basically means you want to store operations globally across your guys. This basically gives you the functionality here to filter group items based on the following price source. Completely changeable based upon what you want to put here. By default, DB market, keep that as is. Here, as prior features in TradeSkillMaster version 3 and so forth, you had the ability to send TradeSkillMaster's output messages to certain text boxes or text windows that you have set up. By default, it's on general. This will show you a list of all the different windows that you have created, message windows, and you can output accordingly. You can forget certain characters. You can ignore certain guilds. We saw this in prior ways to filter groups and structures as well. Your profile is the ability to be able to create on the fly and manage multiple profiles at the same time. You can see here there's a default profile which comes set with TradeSkillMaster 4. You can see here I'm currently on the training profile. You can see here, based upon the group structures that we learned in the last video, I've imported Sherry's profile, which gives me the ability to switch back and forth between her operations and her group structures automatically just by selecting which group I want to do. For testing purposes, I'm going to click the default profile. If I go to my groups, you can see I have default groups here that are set up. Loot Appraiser and my Transmog group. If I go back to settings, to profiles, and I go to my training, notice it's changing it automatically. If I go back to my groups, now I have, based upon our last video, some group structures that we worked with. Going back to settings and I select Sharer's profile, I go to group structures. And here's the transmog list that we've just imported with other vendor type and Darkmoon Fair items. Going back to settings, again, for the purpose of this video, we'll go with the training profile. If you wanted to create a new profile, all you have to do is enter the information here, testing, click the box, create new profile button, and then boom, your profile has been created, and it basically removes and refreshes your TradeSkillMaster 4 group structure operations across all the information. Going back, I'm going to go back to the training profile. The group structure's back, operations are back accordingly. Gives you very powerful functionality to do that. Profiles will allow you, depending on what you want to do, to set to certain realms, to certain characters, to certain way you want to manage things, to switch back and forth for posting power, to be able to post, maybe you have certain operations and so forth on a certain profile that you want to dump things that you want to maintain in a clean profile and not your managed profile or your main profile. This gives you the ability to do that. Account syncing, TSM can sync data automatically between multiple accounts. I've never used this feature before, but this feature was available prior, but supposedly in TradeSkillMaster version 4, it's sharpened up. And it's definitely usable if you do multiple profiles and across multiple accounts. You can sync this information by entering the account data there that you're logged into. The last option on this screen is Twitter integration, meaning if you want to, based upon screenshot information or certain sales, it will include the TradeSkillMaster link, which When someone tweets that out, it will provide that link. They can click on it and it'll go right to the TradeSkillMaster page on that details information. That's general settings. Up to the top, we'll go back into Tooltip Settings. Here, it basically collapses or expands based on what you click on, different functionality underneath that. So there's subcategories underneath Tooltip Settings, which allow us to have specific information in the tooltip based on clicking on the tooltip settings, you notice that it expands into multiple subsections that you can set individual settings in each of those based on what you want to do. The first setting it brings you to is main settings. Here you want to enable tooltips. That's by default is on. You can select the price format of what you want the actual value to be shown as. You can show as modifier depending on what you want to do if you want to hold down certain keys. You can do inventory format in the tooltip based on what you want to do, simple, normal, or none. By default, it's full. Display operation names, you can go specifically into each of these sections, and you provide that power to be able to show, as you're hovering over items, what you actually wanted to show within the tooltip. Enabling a lot of these settings will make the tooltip longer, and obviously removing them will make the tooltip shorter. And you can fine-tune specifically into your view of what you want to do when you hover over an item. So tooltips, embed tooltips, group name, display vendor price, display vendor sell price and buy price, that can all be enabled into the default setting. Underneath value sources, this is where you put down what you actually want to see for price sources in the actual structure. So right now I have minimum buyout and market value. So if I hover over the item, you can see, looking at the middle of the section of the tooltip, you see on the section TSM auction DB, minimum buyout and market value. Notice I also have region, market value average, sale rate, and daily sold based on what I actually have checked. You can opt in to all of these based on what you want to do. Notice the tooltip automatically shrinks and adapts based on these settings. No reload required. Enable them what you want, and then they're back. These custom sources are import strings that you created or from custom prices that are available out there. As you can see from examples, I have a Sherrod's profile here for normal, maximum, and minimum. Any price source that you have there, and we'll get into this later on down here. Any custom prices that you have will show up here as well, and you can include those in your tooltips. Up at the very top, middle section, TradeSkillMaster info, you see custom price source, what it is, and what the value is. I highly recommend only showing here what you plan on using, otherwise showing a lot of prices can get confusing. On a region level, I would suggest using region pricing over global. Region is specific to your server and your realm, so make sure that you're selecting appropriately here based on what you want to see. Accounting section, again, enables tooltip information to display sale information, display expired auctions, gives you amount of time, display canceled since the last sale, display sale rates, display purchase information. All these are optional based on what you want to see. Accounting is the same thing, display accounting values, crafting details, whether you want to show crafting costs, show material costs, show a list of materials in the tooltips. Shopping operations, show the maximum price. You can show destroying values based upon a certain value source. Give you some great flexibility over your tooltip. Jumping down into the accounting section, accounting has its own functionality as well as all of these core operations now. Accounting, do you want to track sales via trade? Don't prompt to track sales. Use smart averages, market value source. When do you actually want to clear your information? To keep a historical list in the accounting section. Auctioning basically is what you want to show here. Do you want to cancel auctions with bids? Do you want to round pricing, disable invalid pricing? Here's some sounds if you're actually posting. Again, auctioning is selling items. If you want certain sounds to be flag you as an audible or reminder that, yeah, your scan's complete or your confirm sound is up, it will prompt you accordingly. Whitelisting, like blacklisting, whitelisting allows you to add someone to your list, which you will not underbid at that point. You'll post at that person's pricing source. So the details here gives you further details. If you don't want to undercut, another player, you can add them to your whitelist and TSM will not undercut them. Again, not a lot of people use this, but let's say you're in a friendly guild or you're working together with a team, you're selling the same information, you're farming together, you don't want to undercut each other, this is what you want to post. Note that if somebody on your whitelist matches your buyout list, a lower bid, TSM will still consider them undercutting you. So note that if somebody on your whitelist matches your buyout but lists a lower bid, TSM will still consider them undercutting you. So again, going back to that percentage that we talked about in the posting operation, that 100%, if that's changed per chance and someone's not matching their buyout price with their bid price, this will flag as undercutting as well. Basically enter the price here, John, add player, and you'll see here, just like the blacklist, you can enable them or disable them or remove them by clicking the X box. The destroying section, by default, enable automatic stack combination, show destroying frame automatically. This will come up automatically based upon if you have professions that provide this functionality to destroy items, disenchant, or break them down. Here's the ability to be able to do disenchant value quality, what you actually want, or the rarity of the item, what you want to consider to be disenchanted. Include soulbound items. You can opt in for including this or not. And then also the disenchant value here as a default. It would be above the custom price that you want to set. 0 will show automatically. Any ignore items will appear on the bottom. Inventory and mailing operations, inbox settings, enable inbox chat messages, amount of bag space to keep free. Again, all these are optional with sounds that you want to set up. Again, if you're posting lots amounts of information or dealing with a lot of items, inventory, crafting, destroying, you want to be notified. Sending settings, setting enable messages, group messages are sent out, and then again, the same type of availability for disenchanting through the mailbox, sending the items. Custom sources, this is where we talked about sharers, minimum, maximum, and normal. But basically, this gives you the flexibility to be able to create custom prices based upon known TSM sources. So type /TSM sources, and notice that it will actually give you a list of TSM prices that are available for you. You can also go to the website to get this listing as well, but this shows you in-game what's available immediately for you to use. So taking this into consideration, you can create custom groups or custom prices to go with certain groups. And you can do that by clicking the add custom price source. Over here, overwrite this. We'll call it test price. Hit enter. Then click under this column. You can't see because it's there's no column sections that you can visually see, but over here, this will give you the next section to add. And let's say you want to do one that's 20% DB market, hit enter, and now you can reference test price in your operations. There's also a way you can test these very quickly to make sure that the price source is value and accurate. So if I want to make a mistake here, notice that it wouldn't allow me to make a mistake or to type something inaccurate. So it kind of has enough knowledge there to pull that up. So from here, I actually have the ability to use this price source. So let me show you that through command line to test this price source. Because what is 20% DB market on a certain item? You can figure it out manually, but let's test our formula. In the test box, /TSM price, space, shift click the item that you want to check, space, and then the name of the variable name of your custom price, test price. Hit enter, and then it will show you through the value Dark Moon Fair using this price, 16 gold. 20% value. You also can do that by testing price sources / TSM price space, shift click the item space, and we know that test price is 20% DB market. Now let's do 10% test price, which will again bring that down to, now we're taking 10% of the 20% of the market, and you can get as flexible as you want. So it's a quick way through command line that you can test your price sources appropriately. If you don't want the item, you can manage anything specifically, delete the item, and the item's gone. Crafting section allows you to, again, ignore items and ignore characters or ignore guilds. And then by default, it gives you this types of formula for crafting the item, as well as taking into consideration material cost. Exclude crafts with cooldowns. This is by default on. Cooldowns is here for ignoring. All the flexibility and power is there based upon price sources that are out there. Again, people have customized formula. By default, this is here for you, ready to use out of the box. Underneath macros gives you the ability to the popular scroll wheel up and down to be able to fast post, cancel buyouts, as well as vendor items appropriately. So when you come in here underneath macros, select the items that you want to have the functionality to do. And down here is the ability to what you want to do for a control key or a modifier key. My settings, I hold down the Alt key. And then my scroll wheel, this is very important. You want to make sure you have both of them. I'm going to scroll up and down rapidly to be able to take upon these actions. If you only have it one way, if it's up, then you're going to continually scrolling up, down accordingly. Hit the update macro key, and you'll get the notification on the bottom left, wherever your chat windows are, that your macro key is now set up and bound to your wheel. Going to shopping in Sniper, I'm going to have a specific video going over this in detail, but again, this allows you the ability to set up a market price, allows you the ability to take into consideration disenchant or search options, and then obviously that beautiful sound if you want alerted when things come up. And another video will actually put this to use, and you'll actually see live certain items that are coming up and how to properly snipe items as quickly as possible to get around bots, to get around folks who might have mistyped an item from a price standpoint, and jump on those items and buy them as soon as possible. Lastly, you have vendor in, and vendor in again gives you the ability to, through a certain market price, if you want to display in chat, which I like, the amount of value that you get when you do when you do vendor items. And then you also have the ability, as you go to vendors, if you have certain items in your bag, to ignore items, and that's done through shift clicking on the item. That will permanently ignore the items, and I basically do this for anything that I never want to vendor. This ignore list will be added here. If you want to remove certain items, you can just click on the item and it would remove it appropriately automatically. So that's the overview of the settings. Lots of information here. Make sure that you take your time and go through this section, become familiar with it. The default settings by out of the box are pretty decent, but again, a lot of these settings are customized, the visual representation of how you want to see things in the game from your perspective. So take your time to go through this. Play this video again if you want to. Take a look at other people's videos, but spend some time in here, folks. Thank you very much. This wraps up this video. Again, I'm ProfitzTV. Thanks for watching. Happy gaming and happy earning.